This is the nature of things. Most people will only ever see a caribou on a quarter. It's a Canadian icon. Caribou are shy and live in the remote wilderness areas of Canada's boreal forest. They are also in trouble. Nowhere is that more true than in Alberta, where prime woodland caribou habitat also happens to have prime oil and gas deposits.
It's just sad to see that these caribou could disappear.
What is not on the table is them stopping their development.
Now, woodland caribou's future is like the flip of a coin. Heads, we pay the price to keep them. Tails, we pay the price of letting them disappear. The battle over the future of caribou is raising tough questions about the place of wildlife in our world and the health of our boreal forest. We still have time to ensure that Alberta's woodland caribou don't become extinct, and we have the laws to protect them. But will we? The vast boreal forest purifies the air and water on which we depend and stores an immense amount of carbon. It's also home to billions of animals, including what's left of the woodland caribou. In west central Alberta, if you want to find caribou, you have to go deep into the wild.
Oh, there's some.
And you'll also have to look very carefully, as caribou travel in small groups.
Actually, I think I've got 1, 2, 3 calves, 2 collars.
The vulnerable calves have made it through their first summer, and that's unusual these days.
Three calves. So 3 calves in that group is not too bad.
Dave Harreview is the Alberta government's top caribou biologist. It's been his life's work to try to save the province's 15 dwindling herds.
Caribou are a fascinating animal to me.
I've got 3 calves at side.
It's a bit of a gift because you do get to see them, and many other people don't.
Now they're listed as a threatened species, but caribou have walked here for more than 10,000 years, with a history that traces back to the last ice age.
I've got a medium bull.
There are 2 types of woodland caribou in Alberta: the boreal, that stay in the foothill forests,
I've got an adult female.
and the mountain, that migrate seasonally.
You know, caribou live in very interesting places. They live in harsh places, in cold and snowy places, often where not very many other species do well.
Their remoteness is their defense. Their long legs and giant hooves are made for traversing the deep snow that keeps other animals away. The dense boreal forest is their shield from predators. But to see the cracks in their defense, you only need a short helicopter trip to the Little Smoky Range.
Yeah, that's one there.
So the Little Smoky area has seen a high level of land uses from timber harvesting, from oil and gas activities. I think it is the most highly disturbed boreal caribou range in Canada.
Only 60 years ago, this 2,500 square kilometer region of the boreal forest was nearly pristine. Today, there are more than 11,000 kilometers of disturbances, fragmenting the old-growth forest. It's a jumble of seismic lines, roads, forest cut blocks, well sites, and pipelines. A federal government report says the caribou habitat here is over 95% disturbed.
So this is a fairly, I'm going to say, fragmented landscape that we're flying over right now. Pretty good for moose, but you know, caribou couldn't exist in this sort of a situation.
The openings in the forest bring deer and moose to places they never went before. Right behind them are the wolves. Caribou are now an easy target.
Not the fault of the predators, they are doing what they do. But in some cases, we have sort of tipped the balance in their favor and against caribou.
Wolves have been culled by wildlife officials across Canada for decades. But Alberta is the only jurisdiction using this controversial practice on this scale.
Can you pound me a GPS here?
The province has killed about 100 wolves a year for 8 years here in Little Smoky.
51.685.
We cull wolves using two techniques. We shoot wolves from aircraft, and we also put out poison bait sites in some portions of the caribou range.
Many conservationists are outraged that they're killing wolves while habitat is still being destroyed. But Harriview is unapologetic.
It's unavoidable. To not do that is to knowingly allow caribou populations to be lost. Caribou populations being lost as a result of some other things that we have done on the land.
Those other things are oil, gas, and logging.
My colleagues who are now working as caribou or wildlife biologists are either intimidated or too afraid to publicly say what needs to be said. And that is that we need to put an end to this sham and seriously adopt and implement land use guidelines that protect these animals once and for all.
Michael Bloomfield used to have Dave Harriview's job back in the late 1970s. He lasted 5 years.
I didn't decide to leave, it was decided for me. I had a decision that was a matter of conscience. And I said no, I wouldn't poison wolves. I wouldn't open the gate to unrestricted development in the area I was responsible for because I had responsibilities to the people of Alberta.
Bloomfield sounded the alarm on caribou 30 years ago, and the province has been documenting their decline ever since.
So again, you see all the tracks and whatnot on the creek there. There's been a lot of caribou travel in here.
Today, they're going to capture and put radio collars on a few young females.
So he's got a couple animals right below him right now.
This female is now one of 200 caribou that will have their every move tracked. The collars show the areas they avoid and track their growth and decline. Some say they have been researched to death, but nothing has come of it.
And certainly we've lost most of the caribou, you know, in the southern and western portions of the province. That's just the fact of it. You know, we're documenting rates of decline for caribou in the province that are just too high for caribou to persist.
And what animal are we looking at?
A deer?
Yes.
Caribou.
A caribou, very good. And does anybody know another name that people call caribous by a lot?
Deer?
Sometimes people call them
Reindeer?
reindeer, yeah.
In 1967, when the Royal Alberta Museum was built, Caribou were a lot more numerous.
Caribou are the only member of the deer family where the females have antlers. Did you know that? Yeah, and so the female have antlers, and they grow them in the springtime, and they keep them all winter.
This is where boreal caribou live in Canada. They're declining all across the country, but the red zones show herds in critical danger of disappearing. Here, 70% are in decline as their home is fragmented well beyond what will support healthy herds.
The scientists, decade after decade, are saying there's a problem, here's the evidence, these are the changes that need to be made, but the implementation never happens. And that's intentional, it's not accidental.
That's a tough charge, but Bloomfield's evidence is in the government library. Report after government report saying exactly the same thing. Habitat protection is key, and it's an immediate priority.
Even if they do go extinct, you should still keep this set up, because then when other people grow up, they might not think caribou or reindeer are actually real.
For over half a century, the Alberta government has said that help is on the way.
They're lying to us. This is all about politics and money, and they're too closely allied. And it's getting worse because the stakes are getting higher. You know, when I was here, they might have been $1 million caribou. Today, you know, these are $1 billion caribou.
And nowhere is that more true than in the Alberta oil sands near Fort McMurray. This massive operation is already approved to nearly triple its production. But now there's a hiccup in the plans. The federal government is responsible for species at risk in Canada. It has finally stepped in with a protection plan for boreal caribou.
The plan is very detailed, particularly with the herds across Alberta and in the area of the oil sands.
In October 2012, the Minister for the Environment, Peter Kent, issued an order. All of Canada's boreal caribou habitat should be at least 65% undisturbed. So the boreal forest will either need to be protected or restored. Environmental groups celebrated, but they soon started to wonder how Alberta was going to make it work.
It's all well and good to create these systems and have these quotas and stuff like that, but when you have a project that's coming in and it's saying, look, if things go ahead as planned, we're going to be exceeding it. So what do? Do you wait until, you know, you have the exceedances, but then you have all these oil sands mines open and they're going and they're pumping. So do you shut them all down?
In Alberta, that's going to be the billion-dollar question. Especially now, when the latest big oil sands project has come calling. Will the federal government enforce its caribou plan and say no to oil? The night before the hearing about the next big oil sands project, environmental lawyer Melissa Gorey wonders if Alberta will finally put its money where its mouth is.
I guess I get fired up because if I don't, who is going to raise those issues? I guess I just feel that there's value in the fight.
This daughter of the northern Alberta Peace Country was raised in the privilege of oil-rich Alberta. But this lawyer feels the need to speak out on the larger environmental issues.
The idea of survival of the fittest, kind of, right? Very Darwinian. It's like, well, you know, if you can't keep up, then too bad for you. But the reality is that, you know, caribou don't have a voice. And so, no, it's not just one species isn't tough enough. What we're doing to this earth is of a magnitude that a lot of species aren't going to be tough enough. And it could get to a point where are humans tough enough?
Inside the community center in Fort McMurray, it's day one of a billion-dollar test of the government's commitment to wildlife in Alberta. And all the players are here. On one side, Shell Oil, with the proposed expansion of its Jack Pine mine. If approved, it would take the oil sands open pit mine from 200,000 to 300,000 barrels a day. According to the VP of Heavy Oil Operations, John Broadhurst, that's in the public interest for Albertans.
It is a very, very thorough, a very, very rigorous process so that we can make sure at the end of the day we have a project that really does meet that public interest test. 87-year-old mom always said that you have a clean conscience, you never have trouble sleeping. I never have trouble sleeping because I believe in what we're doing.
On the other side, Melissa Gorey's Environmental Coalition and 7 other groups arguing to preserve the boreal forest. They'll be using Shell's own environmental assessment to do it. Shell's report says the cumulative impact of all the projects in the area will eat up 47% of caribou habitat.
My hope would be that the panel would see this and say, look, enough is enough. We can't approve this project.
The panel is 3 decision makers appointed by the provincial and federal governments.
My worst fear is, we don't get listened to at all. There's no conditions put on them. They're allowed to go ahead full steam. Maybe we're just speed bumps. I'll be a speed bump. I'd rather be a speed bump than lubricating the way down for development.
But there's another speed bump here, one that is growing into a mountain.
I just want to welcome you, the Joint Review Panel, and the ERCB hearings for the constitutional challenges of the Jack Pine mine.
My mom used to call me Mucky Toon, which means I talk too much. And I think I took that and I tried to use it for the best.
Ariel Deranger grew up during the oil boom and is a communications director for the Athabasca Chippewan First Nation. Fort Chippewan is just a stone's throw from the 3rd biggest oil deposit on Earth. The ACFN believes the Jack Pine mine expansion would tear down more of the boreal forest and threaten the air, water, and wildlife that are essential to their traditional way of life. Caribou are central to that.
Big oil has lots of money and lots of people and lots of lawyers and a lot of power, but we have the truth behind us. We have our rights behind us, and I think that holds a lot of weight when we're talking about fighting these corporations.
But some are asking, should Albertans give up something they see every day in their economy for something they will likely never see?
I think long gone are the days where one digs one's heels in and say, come hell or high water, we're going to protect this animal and I don't care what it costs society.
Stan Boutin is one of Alberta's top caribou biologists. The University of Alberta professor thinks it's time for a reality check. Industry has won the habitat battle in Alberta.
If you're going to try and conserve caribou in what we call bitumen alley, where the resource is worth an enormous amount and is being extracted rapidly, it will cost society billions to in fact do that. And I think one has to realize that what is not on the table is them stopping their development. They have to be able to proceed, and that's a given for them. So what are some of the other options that they could pursue?
Boutin has a provocative approach. He and some colleagues did the cost-benefit analysis of keeping caribou in Alberta. He concludes that Alberta can save the caribou. It just needs to pick which ones.
The feeling is that you can't put a price on a caribou, but we certainly can put a price on what the conservation will cost, and everyone's doing that.
He calls it the triage approach. Alberta would save the caribou in the places where they have the best chance of survival.
If you're going to make those decisions about the losers, you have to pick the winners and have to show society that those winners have lots of energy devoted to them and that you're successful with them.
Caribou need pristine places with little development. how about the national parks?
The caribou are 100% an icon of wilderness, of nature, of, pristine environments. They're important to us culturally, historically, and they're just so interesting and dynamic. They live in probably the most beautiful places in the whole country.
But Parks Canada biologists Leila Neufeld and Mark Bradley are worried about the caribou herds here too. The Banff caribou are completely gone. And the 3 herds in Jasper are in trouble.
Okay, we've got a cow, calf. It's a female calf, actually.
Ironically, here it's nature lovers and all the park management that comes with them that threaten the caribou.
Caribou are evolved to walk on top of snow. So if you have lots of deep, loose snow, caribou are more or less immune from predation. If, however, you build a road up to a place like this or pack it down so that skiers or snow machines can drive on it, then that leads the wolves right up to where the caribou are.
They know this because Big Brother is watching. Parks Canada has remote cameras all over the forest.
In the wintertime especially, we see quite a few wolverine moving through caribou areas. They like the high alpine as well. In the springtime, lots of grizzly bears, black bears, occasionally a cougar.
And the 2-legged animals. These backwoods trails mean once off-limits caribou habitat is being invaded by the curious and the hungry.
So we've got a couple of different wolf packs that are around the Tonquin herd, and right now they're kind of shifting, but we think they're accessing the Tonquin caribou habitat from the west side of the range. Oh look, she's got a collar, so this is Wolf 112.
We've been studying the wolves using GPS collars so we know what their travel rates are. It's been quite conclusive that wolves on the pack trails travel much faster than wolves do in deep snow.
But unlike the provincial biologists, Parks Canada is not going to kill the wolves to save the caribou.
And we think that's what human management in the landscape often screws up.
Many believe wildlife mismanagement helped cause the caribou crisis here. It may not look like it now, but in the early 1900s, it was elk that were a threatened species in Alberta. To protect them and other animals in the parks, wolves were killed for over 50 years. With no predators, the elk population multiplied out of control. So Parks Canada allowed the wolves back in. Since wolf reproductive success is determined by the availability of food, their population then exploded.
The predators came back kind of with a vengeance, and we think that is long-term why there's been this caribou decline, is because we had too many of the one kind of prey, which led to too many predators, which led to too few caribou.
Now, Parks Canada is proposing what may be its most hands-on plan yet.
We need to do something to help those populations.
They'll need to make more caribou.
We think because national parks represent, flora and fauna and scenes for all Canadians, this is a great place to have caribou long-term.
And they're teaming up with the BC government and the Calgary Zoo to do it. This is Donovan. At the Calgary Zoo's breeding facility, this majestic caribou bull is fed, watered, and has a barrel to play with. It's a microcosm of what the future might look like for Canada's icon.
We have this impression that Canada's pristine and natural, but the fact is, many species require our help.
Axel Mehrenschlager leads a Calgary Zoo team of experts in conservation research and the reintroduction of endangered species.
Here in Western Canada, we're working on swift fox, black-footed ferret, prairie dog, northern leopard frog, the whooping crane, burrowing owl, and the Vancouver Island marmot.
The next wild species to be rescued by the zoo might be the mountain caribou. Working with Parks Canada to save the herds, they would start a captive breeding program at the Calgary Zoo.
We as a human species have had an impact on the planet. Why shouldn't we intervene to try and repair that impact? The alternative of doing nothing, to me, is unacceptable.
Genetically selected caribou would be brought in from BC. They'd be housed and protected so the calves survive their critical first year. Some of the yearlings would then join threatened herds in Jasper and parks in BC that are too small to be self-sustaining. But it's very difficult to transport caribou successfully.
18 caribou were released into their new home in the East Kootenays today.
A recent attempt to move caribou from northern to southern British Columbia had disastrous results. 15 of the 19 caribou died within months of the move, at a cost of $10,000 per animal. Many biologists believe that it's throwing good caribou after bad.
The science on caribou in Canada is actually excellent. I don't know why, as a society, we have not been able to stop that freight train from coming that is heading towards caribou.
The culmination of that science will come together in the magic kingdom of Jasper National Park.
Oh, beautiful. And look at that little rub spot he has. That's pretty distinct.
Like chess pieces, every step is strategy. The end game to recreate the natural balance where caribou once thrived alone.
This line in here, I'm not sure what that is.
One patch of forest where caribou are just hanging on is about to be invaded.
It spells out greed. I think that's all it is.
Why is Alberta still selling off land in caribou habitat?
Come on.
The ideas on how to handle the caribou crisis in Alberta all seem backward to trapper Ken Cowles. For him, it's clear. Caribou need old-growth forest and to be left alone.
It's just sad to see that these caribou could disappear. They're beautiful animals and they really deserve to have a place up there, and they do have a place.
Yeah, put it behind the seat there.
That's up at Cowles' trapping cabin, where he's heading to now. It's up in Little Smoky, the place where the Alberta government is killing wolves to protect caribou, because their habitat is 95% disturbed by development.
We see the caribou pretty nearly every day when we go out.
And is that 45-gallon drum up there full?
Now, industry is coming for the last 5%. Cowles got notice that the Alberta government has leased the land to 2 oil companies, and they plan to develop it.
Well, there's 2 wells, and with these wells there will be camps in there. And when they do leave, there will be roads in there. And when they finish, the lumber company goes in and cleans up. But it's right in the middle of the caribou, and the caribou live right there, and they live there all year.
This isn't the first time he's seen caribou disappear. He's had a lifetime of watching wild Alberta get tamed.
It spells out greed. I think that's all it is. And all the oil companies up there, they're all trying to get more oil out of the ground faster than the next one. To take this last little piece of property with all the boreal forest in it isn't right. It isn't the right way to do it.
This time, he contacted the media. He contacted the Prime Minister, the Federal Minister for the Environment, and the province of Alberta, asking them to do something.
I'm hoping that somebody with some authority can look at it They've spent so much money over the years studying them and saying that they're going to fix this. They need to fix it, and they need to fix it now. Because if they don't, that will be their demise.
The whole leasing process is handled online now and is automatically approved. Cowles was told by Alberta Environment and Sustainable Resource Development that there was nothing they could do. This is Alberta Energy's jurisdiction. Oil and gas companies get the approvals to take the boreal forest apart because they promise to put the forest back. It's called habitat reclamation, and in the oil sands, it's still a work in progress.
Unfortunately, under the law, it doesn't require it to be the same. It can be different, it just has to be equivalent, and that's a very vague term. And so pay attention to what they're saying, because they might say stuff that's new or different than what they have in their materials.
At the Jack Pine mine expansion hearings, Shell's plan is to convince the government it can put the forest back.
You could destroy something like wetlands that are needed by a whole bunch of species, and it's a very delicate system, right? And then the company says, okay, we're going to go make a hill and put some trees on it, and we're going to create a little water system over here, and that's equivalent. But the species that were there before, they can't live on that hill with those trees and the little water. They needed that wetlands.
Old-growth forests take 150 years to mature, and the lichen the caribou eat can take 80 years to grow. There's no easy fix here.
And it really makes me nervous when we keep going full steam ahead saying, we'll figure it out later, we'll work it out, technology will get us there. Because there is absolutely no guarantee that it will. And what is the repercussions if it doesn't work out? You can't just simply recreate what you've destroyed. It's not that simple. We're not that smart.
Did people see possible going to the moon in 1969? Probably not. So you have to believe.
Vincent Silvestre is the head of a coalition of some of the biggest companies in the world, the Oil Sands Leadership Initiative, or OSLI.
We've been able to plant, over the last 4 years, 1,600,000 trees. And as we've evolved this model, we are targeting the type of trees and the area of tree we're planting to optimize the result.
But they admit not much has been done to reclaim oil and gas sites yet.
We are catching up with legacy that came before we knew how environmental laws and long-term impact worked.
OSLI members like Shell and ConocoPhillips don't want to stop working in caribou habitat, so they're proposing a radical idea.
It's the right time to take a problem by the horns, caribou horns in this case, before it's too late, and we're still in that time window.
Their win-win idea is being called the exclosure.
Would it make sense to put caribous inside a big fence? And a big fence we're considering is a really big fence. It would be around 1,000 or 2,000 square kilometers.
It means rethinking the wild in wildlife. The fence would cross water and rough terrain. Who would monitor it? And what about the predators? Would all the bears, wolves, cougars, and coyotes inside it have to be killed? Critics say it's impossible to create a space where just industry and the caribou peacefully coexist.
There are people out there that are willing to address the challenges, to take the debate away from the dark side versus the Jedi Knights.
Stan Booten believes it's time for conservationists to work with industry.
Talking to a number of my colleagues that have been working with caribou for a number of years, maybe feel that I've gone over to the dark side.
We'd put 10 caribou in the pen and we'd hold them for about a month or two.
This grad student is working on a maternity penning project. Caribou penning projects are popular with industry, and they've approached Booten to work on some.
And if we pen, let's say, a quarter of them, we're getting to a stable population.
My response to people that feel that this is going to give them a ticket to continue to operate, they already have that ticket.
But pens will need to become permanent fixtures if caribou habitat isn't saved. In 1906, Elk Island National Park was created near Edmonton. It protects an endangered habitat and animals, including the bison herd that was brought here from Montana to save the species from extinction. But is this what we want for caribou?
So even 100 years ago, we were messing up wildlife at that time by our activities. The loss of the bison on the plains is obviously a great example that we should be very ashamed of. And we're going to continue to do that.
That looks to be true for the Alberta government. It's surprising that even now, they're selling off the forest. Will the federal government force Alberta to stop? In Edmonton, the hearings on the Jack Pine mine expansion are coming to a close. An official decision is months away.
I guarantee you that it's just going to be another project that gets rammed through the approval process, and the only thing that we're going to have at the end of the day is an impact benefit agreement. And the world will look down at us and criticize us because we took another deal.
Driving bitumen strip up near Fort McMurray always reminds Arielle Deranger of what once was. Her dad brought her here when she was just a kid.
My dad was what we call a bush Indian. He was raised in the bush and was a trapper and a hunter, fisher and gatherer. He would teach us about medicines, and then he would teach us how to make fires and how to track animals. And just teach us about what it meant to be like Dene Sutherland people.
10 years later, Deranger came back up and drove this road between Fort McMurray and Fort Mackay and found her childhood memories and innocence gone.
Couldn't breathe, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't speak. And I just sat in the car and just tears started coming down my face. And it looks like a post-apocalyptic war zone of some sort. And that's really what it is. I mean, there was a fight to destroy this land, and corporate greed won.
Deranger and her band, the ACFN, are fighting to keep the trees, the caribou, and the other species safe, and to stop this from happening again. So the ACFN developed a stewardship plan. They would protect habitat by setting aside land. But it was ignored by industry and the government.
There's Jack Pine Mine.
Deranger worries that if the caribou disappear, so will her culture.
My dad's mental health deteriorated greatly, and he is now a transient that I never know where he is. He doesn't function well in a society that has no room for the skills of a bushman.
Ken Cowles has returned to his cabin. He just got notice that now 5 companies would be developing their leases in the same places where the caribou were living. The Little Smoky Range is considered the worst-case scenario for caribou habitat in Canada. Cowles is shocked to find it just got worse. The forest he knew is flattened into a road. 2 well sites are being built and room for a pipeline cleared. What he doesn't find are the caribou that lived here.
They're gone now. They left because they can't handle any kind of pressure and the noise, the timber falling and whatever, they left. It's the roads. The wolves travel those roads, the cougars travel those roads, every predator they have travels on those roads. Yes, we need oil production in Alberta. That's what drives the province. I mean, they bid, they pay big money to get these drilling rights, and government gives them the go-ahead to do this.
In 2012, the oil and gas companies paid more than $1 billion for leases to the province.
There's another major pipeline straight ahead there, you can see.
Cowles is wondering where it will all end and believes the buck stops with the Alberta government.
You know, the oil companies, they take advantage, but it's our government that's really screwing us up, because the government is the one that sells the rights to drill oil in here. If they weren't selling them in this Caribou area, they wouldn't be drilling in here.
So it's surprising that even with the federal government strategy in place, Alberta is selling off more leases. Brand new leases are being offered on the Alberta Energy website. There are dozens for sale on thousands of hectares of important caribou habitat. It says so right on the offer.
I mean, there's only 5% left for the caribou. Why do they have to sell the last 5%? I mean, they're supposed to be saving the caribou. Why aren't they?
The Alberta government declined to be interviewed about the caribou crisis.
I'm proud to announce the final regulations.
Canada's Environment Minister, Peter Kent, knows that Alberta is still leasing caribou habitat.
Is a jurisdiction where the provinces will determine exactly how they will apply the recovery strategy to ensure a positive outcome, and I must say that I'm confident that Alberta has both the intention and the capacity to achieve that end.
Kent's office says that the minister will check on Alberta's progress in 5 years.
He's not honoring his responsibilities as a minister for the environment. But he's not important. Environment ministers come and go. Ministers, prime ministers, premiers come and go. It's what do the people of Alberta want? What do the people of Canada want?
Michael Bloomfield believes that Canada needs to consider the bigger picture, all the benefits a healthy boreal forest gives to Canadians.
There's still caribou, there's still hope, there's still an opportunity, and it's not just the responsibility of the politicians or industrial leaders, but of every single Albertan to ask ourselves, is this good enough? Is this who we want to be? That we will destroy all the water, all the land, all the wild species, all the wilderness areas in our province to have a little more money? Are we that greedy? We can live a very joyous and prosperous life without destroying everything in our path.
There's a choice to be made. Will a Canadian symbol of northern resilience become frozen on a coin? A legend of a bygone forest where the wild things once were.